Welcome to the Steve Setka Show, your uncensored champion. I'm your host, Steve Setka, and I'm diving deep into the things that matter most to me: sport, freight, and faith. On the show, we're not afraid to go beyond the surface. We get real, share bold opinions, and hit you where it may be uncomfortable. These are the topics I'm passionate about, and I bet they'll spark something in you too. So buckle up for quick, high-impact episodes that'll shake you up. Let's show. We're part two here with Seniuk. We're not in a rush this time. We got a little bit more time to talk about the depth, talk about the weeds, talk deep, and get into thinking about what's going on behind the scenes in this man's life. So where we left off in the last episode, we're talking about his journey through freight, his journey through sales and leasing, journey through the legal world. And it was all framed based on the conversation surrounding giving your life away to others and being a servant leader. And Eric, I want to start off this episode here, this part two, by telling you a little bit about my day today, about how I gave myself away to others in service to them, necessarily without knowing that I'm going to be rewarded for it. So I had a couple interesting meetings today that were based on audits through business, through freight, and through the transportation industry that I work in. And it was a really ugly situation to start that actually turned quite well. That turned out quite well. It took about a month to go through an audit. And I think how it connects to like giving your life away is that, yeah, for the service of others is you can come up with, we had a situation that came up with invoicing, with payments, with quotes not matching up with shipments, with a bunch of extra charges that were coming up on shipments that were somewhat unexpected, some legitimate, some illegitimate, that we had to fight. But really, like, being of service to the customer in this situation meant putting effort in at a significant level to this audit process, from quoting to shipment to invoicing to making payments, APAR, et cetera. We put like 10, 20 hours into this audit on our side, which was far more than on their side, the customer and the shipper. And the effort just made the optics of that relationship look better than it was when we had started this audit process, because it was a very strong relationship. It got weaker because they found some flaws maybe in our system and we found some flaws in their system, but we both put effort in order to make it better. And now the optics we have in each other's eyes of each other's companies is a lot better, and it looks like it's going to save the relationship. So if we would have taken that situation and not given the time or the energy or the effort to rectifying, the customer would be gone and we would not have the opportunity to serve them anymore. And that didn't happen, fortunately. So we believe that there's going to be like a little bit of a period of like rebuilding some trust, but it'll take a little bit of time, but it's very successful. That's the way I spent my day today. It was such a success. You ever had a situation like that in business where you feel like customers gone, whole shit ton of revenue's gone, and then you just have to flip the switch and serve them and make sure you bring your A game?
Absolutely, absolutely. First of all, kudos to
So in service to my customer, I feel like I saved a relationship, Eric. Have you ever been in a situation like that before?
Yeah, of course, Steve. First of all, kudos to you and your team for putting the effort into that kind of audit that you did. Like I'm sure that when there are administrative um errors and kinks and problems that kind of start to eat away at the trust of a business relationship, it can be very easy to try and bury your head in the sand and just hope that things get better or at least don't get worse, and focus on other customers or other problems. But it takes courage to sink your teeth into that kind of an audit exercise. We've certainly I can certainly think of examples when I worked in lumber, and we had important customers in the Midwest who increasingly were not getting their loads on time. And they're having more and more problems, and even problems with holdups with our customs broker or our in-house accountant. And I can think of quite a few customers where, when one of the three partners that I worked for really would sink their teeth into working with me and working with our accountant and working with the customer to remedy these issues, and doing something that would take, like you said, like in your example, 10 or 20 hours of potentially painful work. When we would do that, what we would really be doing is saving 80 hours or 100 hours of greater pain or just complete loss of that relationship. Absolutely. It takes courage to engage in that kind of audit exercise with good faith and with full both feet, put forward. It's so necessary. So necessary. And it sounds so simple, but it's not. It's not simple to have courage in business, and that's often what you need.
Absolutely, and you're hitting on something here where it's like you have to have judgment too when it is worth it or not worth it as well,
Right.
because sometimes the juice is not worth the squeeze in something like that, and that might depend on the size of the account or the size of the opportunity you're working with, or how significant that relationship is to you, for sure, because something you learn in business pretty quickly is who to spend time with and who to not spend time with, and how to utilize and execute on your time at the highest level. It's called being efficient with your time and effective in your activities, for sure. So I mean, that was something that we went through today, which was really great to go through, more of a capping off the audit on a good track and putting together a spreadsheet that was for the purposes of giving them some insight on what sort of refunds were in place and what sort of credits and overpayments were coming back to them, which is actually quite common in the freight industry, believe it or not. And the fact that we had system implementation and process improvements that are being put into place going forward. And also just the fact that, you realize that you're not the only business out there that's fucked up. Like, ours is not the only business out there that has issues or mistakes or challenges that occur. Everyone else is dealing with the same types of things. I don't think there's a lot of perfect businesses out there, just like there aren't very many perfect people out there either. So that was kind of cool. But that was a big part of my day. You know what, another part, Eric, that I really found beautiful today is that I had another customer that was on a lighter hearted note. It was a difficult, challenging situation with an ocean freight container. There was, we needed customs documents coming in to the country. It already landed in Vancouver. It traveled to Winnipeg and Bonn. We had an unload of a container and we had to get it done this week. And I was out unloading a container tonight for a customer who had a customs delay based on the fact that there was a non-payment on part of the shipment and there was customs issues with payment in terms of duties and taxes, et cetera. So it was delayed by about a week and we're paying storage charges on this. And I decided to absolutely go balls to the wall the last 2 days in a professional manner with the vendors involved, but firm, in order to get this container released from customs, released from the terminal, and get a driver delivered on Friday night at 6 o'clock, which is so uncommon. Okay. But I said, are you going to be able to get staff to help you unload this container? And he said, man, I don't know, to be honest. Like, hiring 20-year-olds these days, you don't get them to work very hard, during the day, let alone on a Friday night. So I'm like, Dean, I'll show up and I will unload that container with you. And he's like, no, man, you don't have to do that. And I'm like, I got nothing on tonight that's stopping me from doing this. I got to be there with you. You need some more hands and some muscles. He was over the moon. So that wasn't necessarily a relationship saver, but it comes down to deposits in the bank account of the relationship so that when you need to withdraw every once in a while, you've saved up a bunch in order to make that work. So that was another beautiful example of me giving away service today without
Yeah.
the expectation of return. And you're like that every single day, Eric. What did you do today that was so exciting that you gave your life away? Because I know you do every single day.
Thank you, Steve. I try to. So actually, I do have an example from today. I kind of have to speak in general terms because some of the work that I do is subject to privilege or confidentiality. But basically, I woke up this morning and I was expecting to have an office catch-up day. That was my entire plan. And I get a text from my supervising lawyer, can you go into court? We have an overnight person who's come into custody. I work in criminal defense now as part of my articling here. So there's someone who got arrested 8 p.m. last night, and they have a right to a bail hearing at the earliest opportunity, which was this morning. And none of the other defense counsel in town were really free to go to court today, including my supervisor. So he asked me, can you go? And I didn't really want to, but just like you're saying, if you make some relationship deposits from time to time, you can rely on a withdrawal. There's a lovely lady here in the town of Dauphin who's kind of responsible for ensuring that there's on-call defense counsel whenever it's needed. And I know that she appreciated the deposit or the sacrifice that I made by going in today. And I was able to get this client a consent release bail. So basically, I talked to the Crown attorney, was able to negotiate some terms by which the Crown was satisfied that he could safely be released on bail while his charges remain pending. So that's what I did this morning. I expected to be catching up on 1,000 other fires in the office. Was not able to do that because instead I had to go down to the court and take care of one person. But this gentleman has a right to a hearing on bail at an early opportunity. His liberty is at stake. He's presumed innocent. And so, that's probably the most important thing, is that I was able to help make him realize upon that right. So I guess that would be my example from today.
Well, that's great. And we didn't think we were going to go down that path, but building on that, the idea of service, first leadership, if you give yourself away first before expecting something from someone else, you're going to be rewarded anyways at some point, whether that's in pay, whether that's in beauty, whether it's in love, or just feeling good about, what you've done to make the world a better place. I know you have a little bit of a different perspective on the law in general, probably just because of the fact you're in criminal defense, but also based on the fact that you are a Canadian lawyer in Manitoba, right, under the Manitoba Law Association, I believe it's called, but you studied elsewhere. You studied abroad in the same legal system, but in a unique circumstance. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are as a lawyer, or soon to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I realized that I wanted to go to law school to become a lawyer, the next question is, well, where are you going to go to law school? And I'm very grateful for the business degree I got from the University of Manitoba. I learned a lot in that process, but I decided that if I was going to go back to school again to pivot my career and to become a lawyer, then I wanted to go somewhere far away, because more than anything, I just wanted the experience of adapting myself and learning new things, making new friends, having new experiences in a faraway place, and building some self-confidence and adaptability within myself by doing that. So I went to the University of Leeds in England. So Leeds is a smaller British city in Yorkshire. It's about a 3-hour train ride north of London, and it was a tremendous 2 years. Certainly, no regrets at all. I absolutely loved the experience. Canada, at one time being a British colony, our legal system's largely based off of British common law. So when I come back with a Bachelor of Law from a British university, when I come back to Canada seeking to eventually become a lawyer, what I do is hand my transcript from University of Leeds to Canada's National Committee of Accreditation. So they kind of look at, what was this Bachelor of Law? What is this university known for? What's it all about? What are the courses that he took? And then what Canadian specific legal knowledge does he still need to demonstrate and learn before he can then article in his province and become a lawyer? So that's the accreditation process. Basically, I had to write 7 challenge exams specifically in Canadian law and do a research and writing course. And then once I'd finished that, then I was able to article just like any other graduate of a Canadian law. So I did that, and then I started my articling year. So I've been articling now here in Dauphin, Manitoba, since July of 2024 in both criminal defense and family law.
So there's an interesting couple things that I know about you as a lawyer. You're a mature student, right? You're older than a lot of the classmates you would have studied with, and you
Yeah.
did this as like a second career, right? And then you're a 30-some-year-old going into a profession with a bunch of younger people, but you have to take a significant step back. And then, if I'm correct, you've also been successful in writing a bunch of your articling examinations and going through those that process to be called to the bar very soon. What sort of exhilaration are you feeling right now as an older, mature law student who had to take a step back and you finally gotten to where you're trying to get to?
Yeah, it's I think it's certainly had its pros and cons. I, as someone who's in my mid 30s and having essentially worked after my first university degree for 9 or 10 years, I do feel that I had some life skills and experiences that positioned me to do well both in law school and in my quest to become a lawyer afterwards. There are just certain things about having the right habits to succeed in law school with your studying, or when you're articling and you have 1,000 different clients in stressful situations, and you need to quickly build trust in your conversations with them and elicit the details that you need to move their matter forward. Having the life skills of this being a second career and having had the challenges of working for a decade certainly set me up well for that. That being said, it's also very humbling to be kind of working and competing alongside people younger than me, making not necessarily the best kind of money as an articling student when I actually made a lot more money working in business years earlier. And in my 30s, having to kind of take that financial hit and that financial sacrifice to move myself into this second career. That is very, very humbling. It's not easy to go through or to swallow your pride in the way in doing that. So, there are good things about it and there are bad things about it. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I absolutely love the law and what I have pivoted towards, and certainly no regrets.
Well, it's fascinating hearing your story, and I'm learning things that I don't know about you as a good friend, that we have to get into deep conversation in order to get to, on the podcast. For sure, it's a different platform in order to hear about those intricacies about your career as a professional. And that's something I appreciate a lot about you, is because you can take the positive out of something that is maybe not so, energetic in the first place. People might think, 30 years old, go back to school. Why the heck would he do that? He had a good job. What kind of decision-making process is he following? But you just did it. You're bold. You're uncensored. You're a champion. So you're a deserving guest of being on this show, the Steve Setka Show, because this is what the listeners want from our show. They want to hear raw, real opinions, and they want to hear unique stories. For sure, I could have brought on any lawyer that works in freight or transportation. Most of them who are younger articling students would be in their early 20s. They're all very similar in the way that they would think. They're from a different generation, which is great. But having someone like yourself who's in a different, a very unique phase of life with what you've done as a professional is fascinating. Eric, I think most people in this world think like a factory worker, potentially. No disrespect to a factory worker, but these factory thinker peoples have a difficult time getting past the surface. The Steve Setka Show has listeners who are depth thinkers, and you're a depth, insightful type of person. So you're going to thrive with our listeners just telling your story, because you don't necessarily just do what you're told and take what life throws at you and run with it. You create your own experience based on a variety of different factors that are coming out of left field, right field, and you're creating a conclusion for your own life. What I want to drive home on this show, when we speak about a variety of different concepts and the themes that we speak on, is that we want people to think for themselves. We want people to be critical. We want them to think deep and get sincere with who they are, do the deep inner work, and not just necessarily follow what the world is telling them to follow. Because we know the world tells us one thing, but it doesn't necessarily always have our best interest at mind. They say if everybody's going one way and you're going the other way, you're probably doing something right. Because following the masses isn't necessarily where success is. Do you resonate and vibe with that?
Absolutely, Steve. First of all, I would say that, you certainly embody a lot of that same spirit of charting your own course with your entrepreneurial story. So, in a lot of ways, people like you doing what you're doing, building up an express, which is not the safe, easy avenue through life, inspires people like me when I feel like I'm at a junction and have to decide between one path or the other. Your story kind of inspires me when I've made the decisions I've made. I heard a really good piece of advice once that I agree with, and it is when you get to a decision point in life, and the decision point is to continue doing what you've been doing because it's working, it's safe, it's everything that you kind of need to be secure. If that's the one side of the decision point, and the other side is, well, no, actually, I want to do something else. I want to do this other thing. And I have some reasons in my mind for wanting to do this other thing. I think it would be very inspiring, or I'm very interested in it, or I think I could be of good service to others in doing this, or I think I'd be a good fit for it. If the decision is one or the other, it can be a very hard decision, but if you're kind of on the fence, I think you have to then default a little bit to the riskier play. You have to take the risk if you're just a little bit on the fence. I think they've done research on people later in their life looking back they find themselves happier or more satisfied that when they were at that decision point, when they were right on the fence, it worked out better for them when they took that riskier play. And so if you're right on the fence, I think you need to take the risk. I would say that if you're right on the fence, you're not actually right on the fence. You have very strong, deep rooted reasons for wanting to go the other direction. And you might be lying to yourself a little bit, saying, oh, I need to be on the fence. Maybe I need to make the safe decision, because you're afraid, and it's natural to be afraid. With the decision that I made to pivot to law as kind of a second career, I am not a person who is going to be enjoying Freedom 55 financial. I'm not going to be retiring at 55. I'm not going to be retiring at 60. I'm not going to be retiring at 65. I frankly expect that I'm probably going to have to work in some way or another till I'm 70, 75 years old. And I think I'm very much okay with that. As long as I am good at what I'm doing and enjoying what I'm doing, uh, and providing a service to others in the way that I'm doing it, I don't see it being work in the traditional sense. And I don't see a problem doing it until I'm 70, 75 years old. That's how I feel.
Well, Eric, I don't know if you've been to Japan. Have you been to Japan ever before?
I've not, no.
I haven't either, and I'd like to go there. But there's a tribe in Japan. I don't know what they're called. I forget where they're from. But they have a concept called ikigai. Have you ever heard of ikigai?
I've not, no.
It's the meaning of ikigai. It doesn't really have an English translation, but it's about purpose in life. And if you're living through your purpose, you really don't ever have an endpoint, because you just continue to develop and evolve with your purpose. So I was reading a book not too long ago. I can't remember where it was. This is what happens when you read and you consume content. You don't remember where it always comes from. But it talked about this concept of ikigai as an alternative to retirement. And I have a strong opinion about retirement in general, because I did not grow up in a house where retirement was really a conversation or a discussion at all. And I know that's very uncommon. And we talk about being unique and charting your own path and creating and being a trailblazer. And that's what I learned growing up. The word retirement never came up for my dad, my mom. She talks about it. She'll get to that point at some point. But my dad's just always been a purpose. He's like, you can always make more money. You can always work and do a little bit more. And I don't need to retire, and I don't do this. And I think it might have had something to do with finances. Who knows, potentially. But it more had to do with the fact that my parents need a purpose in order to continue moving forward, because human happiness is created through progress, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't necessarily even believe in retirement. So you saying I might not retire 60, 65, 70, I don't think anybody should ever retire ever, because I see people retire, and I know a lot of retired people. We all do. And a lot of them stop doing anything. And then guess what happens? They die, or they're not contributing to the world, or they're not giving back, or they're not being in service to others. And what is the point of a life if you can't do what you do well for other people, right? So I don't think what you're saying is wrong at all. And the way that I would look at it is being like, you're just driving towards progress and beauty and purpose and love through your elder years is what you think you might do. And it doesn't have anything to do with retirement. What's your thoughts about that? What does retirement mean to you? Or what does age mean to you? Or what does money or finance mean? And why do you even think like that?
Yeah, I completely agree with pretty much everything you said. I mean, I had a math teacher in high school, Mr. Suffield, and he was an excellent role model for me when I was in high school, and just a phenomenal teacher. And he talked about this idea as well. And he kind of said, you can retire one day, but what you're going to do then is pitch your lawn chair in your backyard with a beach umbrella and maybe sit and have a drink and twiddle your thumbs. And you're going to do that for a week, and then you'll be bored out of your mind. And then what are you going to do next? And I 100% agree. The human beings are kind of built to run uphill. I don't truly think that happiness comes from pleasure. It comes from incrementally succeeding in achieving the next step towards a difficult goal. And human beings are built to always have a difficult goal to incrementally work towards. And you don't have to be in the same job in your 50s, 60s, 70s. You can have more leisure time. You can have more, as you become more talented and specialized in something, you can tend to have more of your own business and be more of your own boss, and you can maybe have some more flexibility. But to completely just give up working on solving problems and doing what I guess we would conventionally think of as retirement, which is doing nothing. I have to agree that that is just not a realistic solution, in my opinion. Like you said, like when you stop being productive and working hard on things, you tend to just die pretty quickly. And I agree with that. At the very least, if someone gives up an income earning job, there's certainly things that you can find meaning in terms of exercise, in terms of volunteering, things like that. There just has to be problems to continue to solve for as long as you live. If you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s, without some sort of dragon to slay, there is no enjoyment, in my opinion, in life. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing in my 70s, but it's not going to be the misery that Mr. Suffield described, sitting in a lawn chair in my backyard, twiddling my thumbs under a beach umbrella. It's going to be a little bit more than that, at least.
Well, this man had an imprint on your mind, and you remember that all the way back in high school, which is fascinating. And I love that we've gotten onto this conversation, because I really think we need to eliminate that term or that concept from the English language. We need to erase it from the Canadian social system and the CPP and all the stuff that goes around. I'm kidding. That's never going to happen. But it's about creating meaning, creating purpose, creating a life that's worth living. I believe that we're here for a few reasons: to work, to produce, to be creative, to solve problems, to replace ourselves as a human, to leave a legacy and give the world something that's even better than yourself going forward for long after all of us are gone. And that's just the way that I believe that the world could be better and should be better. And that's why I do what I do with freight and transportation and business. That's why I'm spiritually based and faithfully founded. And that's why I'm healthy and active and love sport. And that's why I love having friends like yourself, who's a deep thinker, a critical thinker, and a mover and a shaker in the legal world like himself. But that's where we got to wrap up the show for tonight. So Eric, just as a final thought, what do you think that you need to do to be even better tomorrow than you were today? And finish off with telling us where people can find you as well.
Yeah, great question. It's a very sexy topic, Steve. I'm working on a farm income family law research memo right now. So I'm going to try and do a little bit of work finishing that up tomorrow. Now that we have warmer weather, I have less and less of an excuse for not running. I'm going to maybe try and do a jog, because I have let my exercise regimen slip a little bit while I've been articling. And, I've been saying, oh, well, it's the articling stress, that's natural, but really that's just an excuse. So I got to go for a run tomorrow. So those are a couple of things I'm going to do. In terms of where people can find me, I'm on LinkedIn just by my name, Eric Seniuk, Seniuk. I'm on Facebook. My Instagram handle is also that, just at Eric Seniuk. And I love chatting with anyone and everyone. If anyone sends me a DM, as long as you're not clearly some sort of like crazy scammer, I would love to chat with you. I love chatting with new people, and you can meet some of the most inspiring and cool people that way. So happy to connect with anyone online. And it's been a pleasure being on this show, Steve.
Fearless, risk taker, world traveler, future Manitoba top lawyer. Fantastic having you on the show, Eric. Thanks for joining us, talking about freight, faith, sport, and law on this special edition and episode. We're going out there, go kill it in your life, and keep doing everything you're doing to make the world a better place. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks so much, Steve. You too.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode. I hope you found value in what we shared and that you'll take it with you to positively impact the world around you. If so, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and share the show, because we're on a mission to grow and reach more hearts. Prayers, gratitude, and love. Until next time.